So hello everybody and welcome to our second episode of Design Trends, a new show to the Canva Space and Canva community where we explore the ins and outs of design trends currently making waves in the design world and show you how to tap into them with Canva. My name is Jess and today we're joined by Canva visual designer Debbie Turner as well as Kat and Elle. Hello everyone, can you tell us a little bit about you? Maybe starting with you, Debbie.
Thanks, Jess. Hello, everyone. And I'm from the SEO Trend Squad in the templates team. So we look at emerging trends each season and bring them to life in Canva's beautiful template library.
Hi, everyone. It's amazing to see people from all over the world today. So I'm Kat from Canva's Photos team. I'm the art director for our Trend Squad. And every season I look into the biggest current and emerging design trends. From there, the team commissions out shoots to produce photos that cater to these trends. And the goal is to keep the Canva photo library fresh, diverse, and relevant for every user.
Hi, I'm Elle. I'm an illustrator and content designer based in Manila. So I'm under the graphics team Trend Squad. So under the Trend Squad, I do research on current and upcoming design trends, ideate on how to push the Canva element library stylistically. And I also work with amazing artists, a lot from the Philippines to actually create these elements.
Fantastic. So Debbie, what have you chosen as this season's overarching trend?
Cool. So we've got a bold trend for you today, emerging from Gen Z and Gen Z creators and Gen Z brands. With this trend, we further explore the nostalgia that we spoke about last trend season, and more specifically, the 90s and early 2000s.
Right. So you mentioned Gen Z. Who are Gen Z exactly?
Cool. So Gen Z is a generation we refer to born between 97 and 2012. And they're all about self-expression and then mix in the internet literacy of being digital natives and the awareness and activism that comes with the times which we're living in. And you get the main influences of how they see and interpret the world. Just as naturally, these also influence the visual trends popular among the generation.
Right. So how can we spot this aesthetic?
Yeah, so this aesthetic can't really be separated from its context. And we often see creative as a response to world events. Gen Z's aesthetic really wants to be seen and heard, and it's disruptive. I'm going to take you through a high-level overview of the three trends, which we'll be covering on the next slide. So the first sub-trend we'll be taking you through is Adorkable Chaos. It's bright, bold visual aesthetic with mismatched fonts, colors, and just a really fun trend to cover. The second one is Undesigned Designed. So think of layouts and graphic design that isn't necessarily made to look beautiful or perfect in the mainstream sense. And then our third trend we're going to be covering is early 90s and 2000s internet nostalgia. A theme that we see really emerging strongly is Gen Z's love of early internet culture, a time when the internet really felt safer. So think word art and MS Paint. So the first trend we'll be covering is Adorkable Chaos, and I'll hand you over to Kat.
All right, so let's kick off with Adorkable Chaos. I don't know how many of you have noticed, but the golden days of millennial pink, serif fonts, minimalism, and the perfect Instagram-worthy aesthetic are slowly flittering away. The Gen Z have come in, and they are loud and proud. In this new visual wave, less is not more. Their aesthetic is bold, attention-grabbing, ironic, meme-laden, and to the outside viewer can seem like utter chaos. But that's just the point. It's this chaos that will make a viewer stop and stare. It grabs interest and grows increasingly endearing. Perhaps this becomes a necessity in the golden age of minute-long TikTok videos and an endless flow of visual content at thumb's reach. You have to make people look. So this element of Adorkable Chaos is a jarring visual aesthetic that can come in the form of cacophonous colors, mismatched fonts, and harshly lit high-contrast photos. And yes, sometimes all that within the same design, as you can see here. And when it comes to the imagery used within this aesthetic, product photography will lean towards a very professional look that is studio shot, well lit, and finished with a high-key gloss. Portraits will look similarly bold, but it will also come in the form of real, diverse, authentic imagery. So the models featured will showcase things like skin diversity, acne positivity, body inclusivity, representation of racial minorities, and also the LGBTQ plus community, and other images that celebrate the real. The Gen Z is a radically inclusive generation. And this season, Canva is working on several collections, both under graphics and photos, to cater to this theme. So as you can see here, at the photos team, we've just finished a whole collection on Gen Z beauty portraits of about 150 images with a very bold and colorful aesthetic, featuring a diverse cast of Gen Z models. Later on in the show, we'll show you the keywords that'll come in handy for finding this collection and other Gen Z element collections in the library. Handing you over to Deb now to demonstrate how you can create your own adorkably chaotic designs on Canva.
Cool, thanks, Kat. It's such a lovely trend to recreate. And it's perfect for personal use and to communicate the fun personality Adorkable brands are known for. So I'm just going to switch over here to a design that I've kind of put together. And it's really a wild mixture of fonts and colors. And this visual aesthetic can be overwhelming to create. So I try to keep a couple things in mind when designing for this trend. Even with seemingly mismatched fonts and colors, you can really create something beautiful. So over here, I'm going to use one of my favorite tools. You can find it in the effects panel, and it's the curve tool. So I'm just going to make this, we'll go about 33. And this is going to add some movement to your design. There we go. Other way. Perfect. I'm just going to change the color of the font, which you can do here really easily. And as I showed you before, my favorite tool, which I'm not going to do now because it will copy the text over, but you can go over here to this copy style tool, and it really helps you to design super quick in Canva. Another thing I keep in mind is color, because this trend is quite wild. I try and find some balance. So even though, as Kat mentioned, it's quite mismatched fonts and colors, you can still find some balance in there. So I will try and pick maybe one neon. Don't go all neon in your designs. And this pairs really, really nicely with a gradient. And in the font department, there's a lot going on, but I really feel like it still goes together. You can see the nostalgic element coming into this trend with the mismatched serif and sans serif. So I've actually used about 3 fonts here. Playfair Display is one of my favorites. And just to add some emphasis, I put in some italics here. And you can use shapes and colors to really add emphasis. So even though it seems a bit all over the place, the actual style, it's really, really easy to bring some harmony to your design. And it's important to, as I said, just add a bit of balance and emphasis with italics and mixing it all together. And then again, a really fun aspect of this trend is the bright neons and almost stickers that Canva has a lot of in the library. We've got some beautiful elements, which we'll take you through in the next little while. And then IBM Plex is one of my favorite fonts for this trend at the moment. You can make it quite bold. It just adds emphasis. And you can see, as I'll show you now, there's almost a jarring visual aesthetic which grabs the user's attention, because we're talking about new tech, but I'm going to be putting in some old tech here. There we go. This trend loves a bit of deep etched tech, which we've got a lot of in the Canva library. And you can see we're talking about tech tools to make your life a breeze, but we're referring to some of that gorgeous, nostalgic internet tech. And I'll show you where to find all of these. Yeah, really calling out female empowerment in this trend as well. You can see a lot of these trends on Instagram. A lot of brands are actually working with this visual aesthetic, and it's working really, really well for them. A notable one is I Love Creatives, and I'm just going to duplicate this. So you can see those little visual touches there with the pixel art and all of our gorgeous little deep edge tech. So I'm going to go ahead and group that and tweak this a little bit. And there you go. That is our trend recreated for you using all of our gorgeous Canva elements.
That is very, very cool. I love that design. Thank you for taking us through that. On that note, are there any keywords for templates or fonts or effects or other objects in Canva that you would suggest our viewers tap into to recreate this trend?
Yeah, definitely. Kat, Elle, and myself have compiled a list for you here. We've got some awesome fonts, photography, and elements that you can search. And when Jess sends out the presentation, there's a nice little link here for you to my design file so that you guys can create these trends for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So you can either screenshot this right now, but as Debbie said, you will be sent a link to this presentation and it will have links within it to take you through to some of those elements in photography. So we do have a quick question here from Roselle, who had a question around, obviously, you learn the design principles and then you come across a trend like this and it breaks all the design principles. So Roselle was wondering, how did you unlearn the usual or mainstream design principles to especially the Adorkable Chaos, which has mismatched or unbalanced colors and things?
Yeah, so as I said, it seems like it's utter chaos, but I do try and keep a couple of rules in mind. So even though it's essentially breaking all the rules, the traditional rules, I still try and keep kind of composition in mind so that there's still like a visually pleasing aesthetic. And then, like I said, with fonts, try not to go for more than 3, even if they're wildly mismatched. And then what I'll try and do, if I don't want to use too many fonts, like I said, I'll italicize a font for emphasis. In terms of color composition, I'll stick with one kind of neon accent and then try and balance that with a really soft gradient. Yeah, and then just do one last kind of check that everything feels aligned and balanced, even though it's quite wild. It's really important to still keep those design principles in mind. So it looks broken, but it's actually still got a couple of rules in the back end there.
Excellent. Great tips. That's it for questions at the moment.
Awesome. So I'll be handing over to Elle for our second sub-trend.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's Elle again. I'm here with our second design trend on design. So when we think of undesigned design, I want you guys to think of layouts and graphic design that aren't necessarily made to look beautiful or perfect in the mainstream sense. So to contrast it with our typical millennial graphic design trends or mood boards, the same kind of thing that Kat mentioned earlier, that were all about neutral colors, safe layouts, and what a Bloomberg article called bland branding. Undesigned design's whole philosophy actually goes against this grain. So this style or look, we'll call it blanding, as a play on words for bland branding, has actually been super popular in the last few years. So just off the top of my head, some brands I can think of are Muji, like the furniture and home brand, Glossier, the makeup brand, Dollar Shave Club, and Slack even. So the design is deliberate in its effort to look neat, beautiful, and palatable. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, of course, Gen Z, with their undesigned design, decided that they wanted to break the rules a little bit and go with a look that's more authentic, a little bit on the nose, and more self-aware. So I want you guys to think of the following things that you wouldn't really associate with being trendy design. So let's say printed plastic grocery bags, the stickers on your fruit, maybe the menu of a mom and pop restaurant down the street, or even tickets and receipts in your wallet. So these are everyday objects that we wouldn't really look twice at design-wise. But what we've been seeing lately is actually a resurgence of these intentionally ugly designs, or maybe not ugly, but utilitarian designs, but now in the context and sphere of trendy, cutting edge, or even experimental art. So just to give you guys a clearer analogy, I guess. So we see high fashion brands actually recreating the slow brow look, and many designers are stripping down their work to look almost effortless and not over-designed or over-pretentious. So for example, on your upper left, we see these outdoor or heavy rubber duty sandals that aren't exactly what people, or at least Gen Zers, would wear as a fashion statement. But now Gucci has swept in and created their own high fashion, ultra expensive version of these sandals. And even if it's like essentially the same shape and concept of these quote unquote ugly sandals, it's now a fashion statement. And the same goes for the Crocs on the lower left-hand side. So we have platform Crocs made by fashion house Balenciaga that are now all the rage. So I think that the fashion brand Off-White, they're another high fashion brand, is the perfect example of this trend. Their shoes and clothes look like they have plastic tags attached, like they were straight from the factory or manufacturer. So it looks utilitarian and almost unfashionable, but like that's the whole charm of it. I think the great thing about this trend is that it doesn't really follow a specific color scheme, font book, or layout style, but I think you'll know it when you see it. Though it does toe the line between minimalist and maximalist principles, elements are placed with an almost utilitarian mindset. But of course, that's all deliberate. It's like a little wink and nudge from the designer that signals, I know this looks almost mindless and almost like a non-designer could execute this, but that's kind of the point. I guess to stretch out the analogy a bit more, think about how Tarantino does lowbrow film concepts with an art house or tour style. So the intentionally ugly or undesigned design trend kind of follows that same line of thought. At Canva, for my team and the Trend Squad specifically, we're always keeping up with these trends to populate the library with beautiful, unique, and of course, usable elements. So feel free to take a screenshot of this slide for reference. Like Jess said, we'll be sending out this presentation to you guys, but these are just some keywords you can put into the search bar so you can find these elements on your own as well. And then same goes for photos. So these are just a few examples. This is a super recent collection from our photos team. So yeah, these are just, this is just an example of more keywords. And I think that's all for this trend actually. I'll hand you back over to Deb to demonstrate how you can create your own undesigned design, ugly but not quite designs on Canva.
Thanks, Elle. I love the Croc trend. Got a pair of high pink Crocs myself. So as Elle said, examples of this trend would be grocery bags, fruit stickers, receipts, tickets. It's a kind of design you can so easily miss because they're items we've almost grown blind to because it's so ubiquitous. And we really go through a day without interacting with these trends. But if you look at the style, you can actually see how well designed it actually is and how we can take it for granted. So I'm going to go and show you how to recreate this trend. It is quite text heavy. So I've prepped a design file that is kind of aligned. And I'll just be showing you the fonts and colors that I use and why I use them. So I think with this design, it's usually quite text-based, usually quite text-heavy, and also no care for the two font rule. So think of it almost in like a menu design where you'd have like a handwritten font. Here, what I've mocked up is actually a birthday invitation, which is meant to kind of look like a mix between a ticket stub and a till receipt. So here I've chosen a beautiful handwritten font called Signature, which really gives that kind of careless, effortless, designed look. And again, as per the other trend, you can see that even though this trend looks kind of all over the place and designed, it really is quite considered. So a beautiful font to kind of reuse here is Telegraph, which is in the Canva library, a huge favorite of mine, just because it's so clean and it really plays nicely with other fonts. And then a super fun kind of almost marker font is this Kawit, which gives like just a little bit of emphasis there. I've used Kawit on all of the little details like Angela's 40th. And also, I think this trend forces users to kind of look twice, because you're seeing one thing, which is almost like a ticket stub, but it's actually saying something different. So you've got to really take note. I'm going to use my favorite little tool here, which just recreates the style for you. I've used Courgette, which is also not as bold as Kawit, but still gives a bit of character. And I think that's really important with this design, is to give it a little bit of character. I'm going to just duplicate this. And yeah, really be cognizant of where you're putting your information. It really makes a difference just when things are, I've already lined all of this up nicely for you, but you'll take note of details that we actually have in our Canva library, these beautiful kind of outlined shapes that just add emphasis to your design. And the color combination that I've picked here is quite a popular one. As I said before, it's almost like you want to stick to those two-tone color combinations, because there just is so much going on. So I'm just going to color this all. I've picked like almost like a dark red, I wouldn't say burgundy, but it pairs really beautifully with this dusty pink. So you'll see it's already starting to look a little bit more like a ticket or till, I wouldn't say a till receipt, but a ticket stub that you might see in like the 40s or the 50s, but really like a nod to nostalgia. I don't know if we have any Italian viewers here with us, but I recently, before the pandemic, went to the Gucci Museum, and they have used this design aesthetic for all of their tickets that they give out to consumers. I've still got it kept as a bookmark. So really beautiful, I think, collectible design trend that we should see more of, just because it's so fun. And I'm going to add a few finishing touches here, which will really, I think, just elevate this design. Almost done. And then to finish it off, this little barcode, which I'll just, Canva always aligns everything so nicely. And there you go, a beautiful birthday invite that looks like a ticket stub. And I will be taking you through the elements that you can use to create this design trend.
Fantastic. Another brilliant design. I love it. And people commenting also in the Q&A panel that they're really attracted to this unusual design, like you said, that sometimes you overlook because it's so commonly there, but then when you really notice it, they're really interesting designs. So again, everyone can screenshot this, but you will be receiving the presentation with the links. We do have a quick question for you, Debbie. Mumta asks, are these trends global, or do you think they're kind of, maybe this one in particular, is it region specific? Because Mumta has seen a lot of these designs popping up internationally, but not really seen it being done so much in India at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that with the nature of the internet, no trend is really region specific. I mean, I think you'll see more unique trends emerging out of that. And it obviously depends on your context. So maybe you can bring that trend to India. I'm sure it's going to be super popular. Yeah, so if that answers your question. So international, but we will see kind of unique trends popping up.
Fantastic. Mamta says, we'd love to bring it here. So you can get on that then.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, I've attached the design file for you there to try it out. And then on to trend 3, which I'll be taking you through. So our third sub-trend is really just so fun. I mean, who doesn't love a cat with laser eyes and dolphins jumping out of the sea? So again, as I said before, a theme that's really strongly emerging is Gen Z's love of internet culture. And I think because with everything that we're going through in the world, it feels a lot safer. And you can see this trend kind of referenced here with the 8-bit display font, pixel illustrations, and it's really reminiscent of the video games in the 90s. I wasn't a video game kid because I have no coordination, but yeah, this is just a snapshot of the trend.
Fantastic. So what can you tell us about this trend, Debbie?
Cool. So we also see in this trend how Gen Z is actually dealing with the ever-present uncertainty through humor, irony, and you'll see memes that really critique society. And Gen Z's design language is really open-minded. It's saturated with internet culture. We can also see the kind of maximalist look of the nostalgia trend. It's almost like a reaction to the utilitarian design that's permeated brands, as I'll refer to earlier. And people are really looking at connecting with something more human, less cold and removed, especially in these kind of uncertain times. So yeah, we can see this in the VHS TikTok trend that has been pretty strong earlier. And I've put together just a little snapshot of what we have in the Canva library. So both Elle and Kat's team work really hard at creating these gorgeous assets. A little bit of vaporwave, really, really popular, these gorgeous 9-bit illustrations. And one of my favorite elements in the library at the moment, I've used it several times, is this kind of lined gradient software UI elements, which makes reference to almost like I'd say this goes a little bit early 2000s. So the Photoshop aesthetic with some beautiful gradients. And I will be taking you to, I think I probably had the most fun with this is how to create a design with these kind of aesthetics and assets in the Canva library. Here we go. So I've started off with this really beautiful, almost think Hawaiian tropical sunset aesthetic. And then what's really popular here, I've put together a couple of assets that I really feel encapsulate this trend. And one of the favorites at the moment is this statue. You'll see it popping up in all of the references, just almost like that nostalgic, but back to almost that nostalgic nod to Roman times. And I'll just be taking the background out using our background remover tool, which is super, super easy. You just click here and we'll take the background away from me. I really like the fact that the statue was wearing a mask, which takes us back to the pandemic times. So beautifully etched there. Don't need to do a thing. And what I might do here is go to the effects panel, and I've added a couple of effects here, which you can install. We've got a beautiful glitch effect. We've got a pixelate effect. And I really love this color mix. I might just demonstrate how that looks for you guys. Sometimes you just have to turn it back a bit. I've added in a bit of an amethyst effect. And then sometimes I like to, we won't do the trace effect. We'll stick to the amethyst for this. And I think we're good there. Another really popular aesthetic here is, you'll see almost like the Microsoft Word or Microsoft screensaver that really encapsulates like the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm sure we've all had it as our background. And then a nod to the vaporwave aesthetic, which kind of adds a bit of dimension to the design. And I'm loving the pink, so we'll stick to that. And then one of my absolute favorite, I couldn't leave it out, is this dolphin. You see it everywhere, dolphins. It's just so memey. And we do have a couple. I've already etched this, but I'm going to give it a little bit more of a blue tone, which I'll do here. I actually tried a split tone, which was quite fun. So maybe we'll do that and turn it down a little bit. There we go. These apps are really so easy and so useful to use in Canva. As I said before, you can find it in the effects panel. And then bring in some of our almost Photoshop elements, which are all in the library, and we'll tag all of those elements for you. Just bring it back. And then these really cute little slogans with that gorgeous courier font. I want this to feel a little bit more 90s, early 2000s. So I'm changing up the gradient here a bit, which you can do in the color panel here. It lets you customize your gradients completely. And then what design wouldn't be complete without a bit of leafy green, palm tree. I think this is actually a banana leaf, just one of my favorites. And I've just added it in here. You can play around with the kind of framing aspect. There we go. I'm actually going to steal one of these from my original design because I didn't add it to my folder, but you can find all of these elements etched and ready for you in the Canva library. And yeah, I think the hallmarks of this trend, as you can see here, I've put them all together, but that really tropical aspect mixed with a bit of vaporwave, some dolphins, and then to complete that, a little bit of, just going to steal this here, a little bit of vaporwave kind of word art, which we also have in the Canva library. And this is really about the OTT aspect of this trend. It's really so much fun to use, and you can go as wild as you would like. I'll just tone that down a little bit. And yeah, with a lot of these elements, it's all really customizable. which is super great for you guys. You can create all your own trends, and I think we are there.
That is super fun. I love that design. Although, you know, personally, I don't think you can go past the cat with the rainbow laser eyeballs. But if we have that, if we have dolphins instead, I think everybody's happy. That's fantastic.
I'll leave the cat in there for you. It's in the presentation. You guys can grab it out.
Have you put together some Canva ingredients for this design as well for our viewers?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a ton of ingredients for you guys to play around with. I know Kat and Elle have worked super hard this season on the Canva Y2K portraits, some beautiful gradient and lined elements for you guys to use. And I've added in a copy of the design for you guys to play around with.
Fantastic. We do have a couple of questions. Were there any other links or anything you wanted to share first, or have we got time for some questions?
No, we've definitely got time for questions. All the links are going to be with you guys when Jess sends the presentation out. And yeah,
Beautiful.
So we've got all of our references and time for some questions.
Spectacular. Okay, so Sebastian was wondering, there are so many interesting trends out there. How does a brand use different trends but still stay on brand? Have you got any tips there?
So I'll kick it off, but I'd love for Elle and Kat to input there too. I think what's really important for a brand is to have your own personality. So I think if you're staying true to your personality and you feel like one of these trends really sticks out for you and aligns with your brand's vision, then go for it. I've seen a lot of brands, as I mentioned, like female boss brands. I Love Creative is a great example that really uses the Adorkable trend well, and it totally fits the brand aesthetic. So the tone of voice fits in with the wild mismatched fonts. There's a bit of internet nostalgia and meminess to the brand, and just uses it quite successfully to give tips and share design trends. So yeah, I think if the trend fits your brand, go for it. And there are such beautiful ways of incorporating bits of each trend. Maybe Elle or Kat, if you guys have any tips for the viewers.
Yeah, I think one thing to be mindful about is what is most distinctive about your brand. So just taking a really simple example, let's say the Canva logo, the Canva font that we use and the distinct blue color, people really identify strongly with Canva. But if we were to incorporate the nostalgic internet trend, for example, we'd make the circle like pixelated or things like that. But stick to what keeps your brand distinctive from others, and then just plug in the little trends that you find popping up here and there.
Yeah, I guess to add on that, for your brand, what really matters most is your tone, and yeah, like the general idea, tone, or yeah, what makes your brand distinctive rather than like how it looks. Because at the end of the day, I think people will associate your brand not so much on how you look, because things like that are always in flux. Like a year from now, you might decide that you want to rebrand, but like that rebrand will always follow the train of thought or the tone that your brand is known for or that you want to establish. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Elle and Katrina. Elle, did you want to pick up the next question, which was what sorts of people or businesses are using that last trend the most? Do you have any thoughts about that?
For 90s nostalgia, I see it a lot on Instagram. Like, I don't know if you would count this as a business, but like a lot of, I guess, self-help Instagram accounts, a lot of horoscope, MBTI accounts, like zodiac accounts, like that's kind of stuff. I can't speak too much on like a specific brand because none really come to mind, but I see it more of like as something I see a lot on Instagram accounts. So yeah. Oh yeah, certain beauty brands, just as Tila said in the comments.
Yeah, just to add to what Elle's saying, so these trends are very Gen Z specific. So you'll see brands incorporating this when they want to target a Gen Z audience. So for example, the products that are big for the Gen Zers now is exactly what Dilla said. Beauty products, acne prevention, skincare is very big. So you'll see a lot of beauty brands hopping onto this bandwagon, this design bandwagon.
Interesting. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. We've just got one last question, and people are always looking and for inspiration and interested where the designers get their inspiration from as well. So is there like one place that you go to, maybe an internet or a magazine, internet site or a magazine that you love to get inspiration from? Would you share it with the viewers? So should we start with Kat? You want to take that one first?
Well, this website I got into because it's in my line of work, but WGSN, they do trend forecasting. So they'll forecast trends that they think are going to come a year, 2 years from now. So it's very insightful to see what they're predicting based on current societal trends and seeing where that takes us design-wise. That's a good website to check out.
For me, this is more of like illustration and graphic design, but I like the blog It's Nice That. So I think they're based in the UK, but they have like they feature like some really cutting edge and really current illustrators and graphic designers.
No, I think Kat and Elle, we have pretty similar tastes. Love WGSN. There's also a site called Elle. So for research like this, I'll often go to Bloomberg, maybe look at a couple of Tumblr or Reddit articles. But then for graphic design trends, I have a super handy browser app installed, which is the Muesli app. And that kind of pulls through from a host of different sites, from Pinterest to Behance. They also send out their own kind of favorite trends for the week. So yeah, the Muesli app, definitely a favorite. And then Pinterest, at the beginning of the year, they put out like a Pinterest Predicts, which I found super, super useful, which covers everything, not so much graphic design trends, but definitely trends within the design space and the consumer space.
Spectacular. That sounds like so much inspiration for everybody to get their teeth into. So thank you for sharing those. And that brings us to the end of today's session. So a huge thank you to Debbie, Kat, and Elle for sharing their expertise with us today. And thank you, everybody who was able to join us live on the call today. We love having you here and hearing from you in the chat. And there's lots and lots of thanks coming through today. Really, really useful session, and people really appreciated it. So we hope to see you at next season's Designed Trends webinar. And stay tuned to Canva Space, canva.com/Canva-space, which is where you can see all webinars coming up. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at another Canva Space webinar. Thank you so much.